Tuesday night, what about this? Can you guys hear me okay? I forgot that we didn't do a sound check. Oh, I can hear myself now. How are you all? How lovely to see you here. I mean, honestly, I just walked in earlier, and every single time I come into this space, it absolutely takes my breath away, but none more so than when we're here celebrating the man who we are to sing the praises of tonight. Thank you for joining us at Òran Mór. This is the 5th annual Gray Day, which is unbelievable, singing the praises of the life and the work of the exceptional Scottish polymath, like we don't know how wonderful he was and is, Alasdair Gray. This would have been his 90th birthday year. My name is Nicola Meighan. I'm an arts writer and broadcaster. I present Friday afternoons on BBC Radio Scotland. I've got a podcast, Scottish Arts and Culture podcast called I Kick Up the Arts. There are free bookmarks all around the room if you want some of them. And I am delighted to be with you between now and about 10 o'clock. Who's counting? But thereabouts. We're going to celebrate Alasdair's incredible and shape-shifting and constant influence on Glasgow, on our collective imaginations and on creativity. There is going to be theatre, there's going to be comedy, there's going to be new writing, performances, animations, loads of stuff, and just us all hanging about together, which is wonderful as well. And it is all curated by the Alasdair Gray Archive's Custodian, best job title in the world, by the way, Sorcha Dallas. And it is all, yeah, that does deserve a cheer, by the way, thank you. Let's just start practicing that now, by the way. The cheering practice is about to begin and then some. And yeah, also, let's just cheer for this. I know the lights are dimmed at the moment, but just to be under the heavens and Alasdair Gray here, that needs a cheer as well. Let's start. Okay. Felt like a preacher there. So what is coming up? Well, using Alasdair's great leaps of creativity as a jumping off point for more of the same, we are going to have, and by the way, every name I say now, just cheer, save me the bother of asking, comedic scratch performances and responses from Christopher Macarthur-Boyd. That's more like it. Ashley Storrie. Alan Bissett. Usually I have to whip into the microphone as well, but I'm not even doing that yet. There's more names, by the way, don't worry. These, it has to be said, have been developed in partnership with Glasgow International Comedy Festival. They're going to be back here next month, and they're supported by the Glasgow 850 Festival Fund, or 850. These are the things I should have checked beforehand. I will later. Anyway, there's also going to be an exclusive reading of award-winning Sara Sheridan, writer, ingenious, historical excavator. She's got a brand new short story. It is called Found. Sara Sheridan, by the way, you forgot. That is commissioned by the Alasdair Gray Archive in partnership with Creative Writing at the University of Strathclyde. I'm moving my paper because there are all sorts of shadows up here. It's very mysterious. A screening alongside all of those on-stage treats, there's going to be a series of animations. These come from the Communication Design 4th year students at the Glasgow School of Art. That needs a cheer, by the way. Of course it does. Where would we be without GSA? They're responding to Scott Twynholm's original score for 2014's Alasdair Gray documentary, A Life in Progress. If you haven't watched it, if you haven't caught that, my goodness me, it is stunning. Anyway, before we get to all of that, and I have said her name before, but I'm going to do it again, and it needs an even bigger cheer. I'm thrilled to welcome the Custodian. She needs a t-shirt of the Alasdair Gray Archive, Sorcha Dallas. Sorcha's going to say a few words and to introduce a brand new film.
Thank you. Hello. Happy Gray Day, everyone. I'm just going to say a few thank yous before we get to the funny bits. So Alasdair Gray had said, I always felt that stories and pictures were a way of keeping people I knew alive and as they were, and keep them remembered long after they're forgotten, I hope. And that really is what Gray Day is all about. It's about celebrating Alasdair's life and work and his enduring legacy and impact on others. And as Nicola said, it's especially timely because 2025 is our birthday, we're turning 5. It's Glasgow's 850th, and Alasdair would have been 90, so it's quite a seminal year. So first of all, thank you to all of you for coming along and celebrating our 5th Gray Day. We're a charity and we really rely on project funding to deliver our programme of events. So this event is really significant for us to be able to keep going and continue with our programme. So a big thank you for that and for all your support. And as a way of saying thank you, I'd like to invite you all to come visit us at the archive, maybe not all collectively, because we can only fit about 30 people in at a time. But please all do come. It's a free resource. It's for all of you to be able to use and explore. And we do free weekly tours. So book yourself in, get onto social media and the website and come visit us. If you do want to continue to support us tonight, though, please visit our shop. We've got some totes, t-shirts, a brand new mug. Alasdair loved using a mug for a hot and cold beverage, but also to mix his paints up in, so it felt quite a timely addition to our merchandise. So please go and do that. And there's also a range of different books that you can pick up, not just by Alasdair, but by some of the featured writers tonight here too. So a big part of what we do at the archive is we, of course, care for the artworks and the ephemera that's come from Alasdair's last home, and we've installed it in a really cosy, welcoming way to look like his front room. So it's a very friendly space for people to come and explore the collection. We support our programme through a number of different ways. We do a lot of education, we do a lot of off-site events like this, but a big part of what we've done from the start has been our creative commissioning programme, and that's been something that's been ongoing since inception in 2020. So we're really delighted to, as Nicola said, to share some of those commissions tonight. It's really a celebration of Alasdair's influence across a whole range of different mediums. So thanks first of all to Sara for the commission and working in partnership with our good friends at Creative Writing with Rog Glass and the University of Strathclyde. Thanks also to all the communication design students, to Lucy, Juno, Eloise and Kira, and their tutors, Mark Baines and Ross Hogg, for the brilliant animations you're going to see too. Big thanks to Scott Twynholm for entrusting us with his wonderful soundtrack for the students to respond to as well. The second half of the programme is all the funny bits, and we're so thankful to have collaborated this year with a brilliant team from Glasgow Comedy Festival, and a huge thanks to them, to Krista, to the brilliant director and all her fantastic team, especially Hannah and Colette, for all your incredible social media support. You're going to be in for a real treat to see and hear Alan Bissett, Ashley Storrie and Christopher Macarthur-Boyd and see what they've been developing. Big thanks also to Paul Bridges and to Kirsten McLean for their support in the delivery of those projects as well. Tonight, as Nicola said, is a scratch performance. We'll also be performing back under here in a month on the 23rd of March. So please come back if you've enjoyed it and support that event too. A big thanks also to the wonderful Nicola Meighan, her relentless enthusiasm for championing Scottish culture. And if you've not listened to A Kick Up the Arts, I highly recommend it. A listen, it's a brilliant listen. Please go and check that out too. Big thanks also to Canongate, who've supported and worked with us from the start in delivering this event, and to Òran Mór. I mean, there's no better place under the Sistine Chapel that Alasdair Gray created here at Òran Mór. So big thanks to the team, especially to Mark on the sound and to Creon every year for bearing with us and our ideas and what we want to do here. And also big thanks to Alasdair for recording the event here tonight too. On behalf of the archive, I'd just like to thank a few people, to thank our board for their continued support, to thank my team, Abby, Holly and Laura, who are here tonight. A special thanks to Abby for all the technical design work that she's been doing this year, and also for Holly. She's not long in her post, and she's already created a short film which I'm about to introduce. So before we get to all these wonderful new responses to Alasdair's work, we felt it was really important to start off with this little film so that we hear a little bit more from him and about his enduring legacy too. Alasdair, we all really miss you dearly. I feel incredibly thankful to have known you and for all the wealth of material that you've left behind, from which we can all collectively learn, laugh and grow. So have a brilliant evening. Thank you for bearing with me with that very long list of thank yous, and enjoy your night. Bye.
"2025 is a big year for Glasgow and for all things Gray. In the same year, the city celebrates its 850th anniversary and the Alasdair Gray Archive turns 5. We pay tribute to Alasdair Gray, one of Glasgow's most relentless recorders in what would have been his 90th birthday year. Alasdair was a great Glaswegian, a painterly writer, a literary artist in residence who claimed the right to live in the present whilst in dialogue with the past. He was many things to many people, but often suitably cryptic about describing himself.
He had a kind of no feeling for himself as a stylish person, but everything that he did was stylish and creatively stylish and creatively intense, creatively deep. There were many funny things too as well, but there's no reason why you shouldn't think funny things aren't deep.
Glasgow is a magnificent city, said McAlpin. Why do we hardly ever notice that? Because nobody imagines living here, said Thaw. But if a city hasn't been used by an artist, not even the inhabitants live there imaginatively.
Well, by writing that passage, Alasdair changed the truth that it contains by it being a city that we are allowed to imagine living in now. He has been the poet of this city in prose and in painting.
I certainly did intend it to be a very big, very famous novel. I thought, however, I might die before many people took it seriously. I've been very lucky.
For my own part, certainly was a great inconvenience when Alasdair was here, and we do know that he created a bit of a turmoil by utilising almost every cup we had in the premises to keep painting, and it was difficult to get a cup of tea sometimes.
I haven't the faintest idea what is the real me. In asking me what's the real me, it's like asking, what is your book really about?
Alasdair's whole work was about creatively responding to things that exist already, to artworks, to books, and we create that same opportunity for others. So we invite them into the archive to spend time there and think about growing it and making it a generative resource now and for the future.
I've always had, an interest in Alice's work, and I think it's going to be a great memento of my time that I've spent here volunteering at the archive, as well as just my time in Glasgow in general, because I'm originally from Italy, and my time spent here has definitely been informed by Alasdair's work in general. It's given me a different perspective on how I see and how I live in the city, so it's definitely going to be a nice memory of it later on in life as well.
I hadn't realised that the archive would be an installation which recreates Alasdair's last home, the front room of that home, as it would have been, but I hadn't realised I'd be able to take down from the shelves for a moment some of the books that I've taken down from the shelves in different homes that he's lived in.
And sitting in this chair, and I think gazing over the bookshelf and around the space is maybe as close as we can come to imagining for a second that we were Alasdair. Thus we're able to visit these objects with a depth and intensity that is only possible when you can emulate or mime being the creator of such things.
But Alasdair, well, I find he still lives with me every day, because going up the clay pits and what he has got written there, especially if we are, oh God, what is the word? If we gladly accept it, the present is our greatest gift. So this present, as we are now gladly accepting it, is our greatest gift. Thank you, Alasdair. Look up. Hey, look at that work that he has done in this place as well. It's just fantastic.
Alasdair championed others, exploring the creative potential of what this city could hold, giving permission to all its inhabitants to live an imaginative life. The Alasdair Gray Archive continues to foster a dialogue with Alasdair through the rich and multifaceted works he has left behind, and through making his archive a living resource for all to explore. So happy birthday to the Alasdair Gray Archive, to Glasgow, and especially to Alasdair Gray.
When writing a book, I have a feeling that I'm telling a story to people, and when I come to the last sentence thinking, oh well, they're leaving me now, I'm leaving them. The end sounds terribly final. Goodbye seems to be the only, more polite. Goodbye.
Actually got so immersed in that wonderful film and Alasdair's voice and hearing Bernard and Liz Lockhead reflecting on him, I forgot what I was doing and I nearly didn't come back up on the stage. I was like, this is a lovely night I'm having. How utterly wonderful. I mean, I know we read his words, and I think probably many of us here can still hear his words in our own heads, but to have his wisdom and self-deprecation ringing out in this building is just really, really lovely. And also let's hear it for Sorcha Dallas again, and of course Alasdair Gray in that beautiful film. If you haven't been to the archive, it's every bit as magical and welcoming, it has to be said, absolutely welcoming as Liz and indeed as Michael Peterson sitting in that chair. He wrote a whole poem about it a few years ago, say. So yeah, lots to explore if you haven't been, and if you have, we'll probably all go back, no doubt. And especially now there's those wonderful mugs. I got a cup of coffee in one last time. Might have a cold drink next time, Sorcha, if you've got a license. Anyway, back to this evening. What have we got coming up? Loads to come, comedy later, but right now, the first of this year's live performances. Last year, Sara Sheridan was invited into that very archive, the Alasdair Gray Archive, as part of the Creative Commission series. This was with Rog Glass and creative writing at the University of Strathclyde. And this was on a mission to explore making a new work inspired by the collection. Sara, briefly, is an award-winning activist and writer. She digs really, really deep, fascinating storytelling and little facts of history, details, and very much always focusing on forgotten and women's voices as often as not. The Fair Botanist won the Waterstones Scottish Book of the Year a little while back. The amazing Where Are the Women, if you haven't got hold of that, is an absolute must-read. It basically remaps the country with women's voices and faces and stories and tales. And then there's the wonderful Secrets of Blytheswood Square, historical mystery. I think Sara and I, after her reading, might chat about that a little bit, not too much, but it's on sale up there at that wonderful shop. Loads of stuff on sale. Anyway, for this, Sara has created a brand new short story. It's called Found, and it explores Alasdair's mural artworks. Of course, there's loads of them throughout the city, and also the enduring legacy that they have had on Glasgow's landscape and history. This is an excerpt of it, has to be said. You can get the full thing online. There is going to be a QR code, I think, because we're very tech savvy, aren't we? There's going to be a QR code later, so you can access the whole thing, and it's Sara reading it in Alasdair's chair, no less. But for now, let us hear an excerpt, and let us hear, for the utterly, utterly wonderful reading an excerpt from Found, Sara Sheridan.
I'm always the shortest one that comes up onto the stage. So I spend a lot of time in archives. I am the SWAT content this evening. And the reason that I hang out in archives, that archives for me are magical places, is this. Sometimes you call up a dusty old box of documents and you're reading them, and let's be clear, a lot of content in most archives is quite boring. Not the Alasdair Gray Archive, obviously. But often as a novelist, you're in there and you're fishing for content. And then suddenly you open a journal or a letter, and it might be something that nobody else has read for 100 or 200 or 300 years. And suddenly the person writing it is standing next to you and they're telling you about their life. That they just saw an elephant, or their friend died, or that they miss home. You're inside their head. And that's magic, because archives are the raw material that's left of where we come from. Not only personally where we come from, but culturally and socially and politically. And I always say, you can't understand where you are until you understand where you come from. And you can't decide where you want to go until you know both of these things. And that's why archives are really important. And the Alasdair Gray Archive is unusual because it's been organised so soon after Alasdair's death. For many people involved in the archive, Alasdair's within living memory, for many of you tonight too. We met him, and to different degrees we knew him. Some people knew him very well. I sometimes feel when I go there, it's like Alasdair Anonymous, and you turn up and you're like, hi, my name is Sara, and I met Alasdair 4 times. Like, it's an admission. And I did meet him a few times, by the way. He was so eccentric, and I guess I connected with that because I'm probably quite eccentric too. The common understanding is that folk fall into 2 categories. You're either creative or you're non-creative. But my view is that more important to your life and to your work, actually, is a different distinction. Are you a conformist or are you a non-conformist? Or more accurately, to what extent are you conformist or non-conformist? Because like all the important things, it's a rainbow. So for writers and artists and musicians and actors, and I know a lot of writers and artists and musicians and actors, that means, for example, do you conform to a genre, or do prizes and awards matter to you? To what extent and in what way do you challenge the cultural or societal norms of your day? How diverse is your oeuvre? As a SWAT, I find the non-conformists most interesting in the archive, and also the way that over time, often non-conformists are subsumed into mainstream culture, the way it changes. And the example I give of this is Jane Austen. Jane Austen, conformist, right? Absolutely not. Austen really pissed people off with Mansfield Park, which she was searing about her anti-establishment beliefs. She used the names of all the major slaveholders for the baddies. She didn't get married, and she kicked off about that properly, like what it did to her life. Jane Austen was a non-conformist in her era, and today we have forgotten that. She's been subsumed into frocks and manners and some kind of neutered pre-feminist lexicon, and Colin Firth coming out of a lake wet and looking honestly quite hot. The Alasdair Gray Archive will ensure, I have no doubt, that this doesn't happen to Alasdair's legacy. He was the preeminent writer and artist in Scotland in his time. He has a distinctive voice, a visual voice, and a narrative voice. He is important. His observations of the Glasgow and the Scotland that he came from are important too. They tell us about where we are, and I am confident that they will continue to do that. Excuse me. So when I was asked to write something for the archive, a creative commission, I decided to write a short story. Now, for novelists, short stories are fun. Backstage at book festivals, writers who only write short stories or kids' books or whatever say that it's just as difficult as writing a novel. As a novelist who's also written short stories and kids' books for that matter, I can tell you that's complete rubbish. It isn't true. Short stories for me are fun. It's all over quickly. And I decided I wanted to write a short story about a fictional Alasdair Gray mural, a lost erotic mural of naked women. Alasdair wrote women really, really well. Belle Baxter's, for me, his best female character. I loved her long before she looked like Emma Stone. She immediately felt to me like a late 19th, early 20th century Scottish woman, someone upper middle class who was going to do what she wanted to do, like Elsie Ingalls or Sophia Jex-Blake. I wanted to recognize that character finesse, the way that women were in his stories when I was writing, but also how Alasdair painted and drew the female form. Alasdair's murals were often based on the Book of Genesis. You can see above us the Garden of Eden. So I wanted to write naked women. And the mural in the story is lost because Alasdair's work wasn't appreciated enough in his early career, in part because he was so non-conformist. So for that reason, in real life, there are lost works because people who bought or commissioned his work didn't conserve it. And that's why I called the short story Found. So I'm going to read you now from the story I wrote, which turned out to be quite long, too long to read all the way through because I'm a novelist. Though we do have this recording of me doing it later. If you fancy a bedtime story, it'll be on the Archive's YouTube channel, and they're also going to put up a link. I don't know if it's not behind me yet. The story's narrator is an older woman. She's 70, and she's a textile conservator, and she comes to Glasgow from London on a short-term contract and discovers in the flat she's rented that there's this little tear in the wallpaper. So here we go. The peachy light cut a slice into the room, highlighting a join in the thick ochre wallpaper, which was peeling only a fraction. I could just make out something behind it, something odd. I stood in a chair and worried that I was going mad, like the protagonist of Charlotte Perkin Gilman's famous horror story, a woman trapped behind yellow wallpaper, picking it away, Cautiously, I stripped the curled edge, revealing, I hesitate to tell you, a human bottom. An arse, a bum that is, figuratively drawn. Goodness, I said, and jumped down, backing away. The arse hovered overhead for some days. I ate my cereal in the morning, glancing at it. I tried to turn away at night, but it proved impossible to ignore. And eventually, I found a stepladder in a cupboard and climbed up to perform an examination. Carefully, easing the paper to one side with a kitchen knife, revealed the arse, though muscular, belonged to a woman's body, lounging lengthways just beneath the cornice. She was glancing over her shoulder, long hair down her back, and a label beside her that said, Inga. The paper pulled away easily as I slowly made my way down the wall to reveal a sprawling landscape, including more women, some naked, some clothed, all named on little scrolls beside them. Eve, Lilith, Mrs. Cromer, the cleaner. Claire Ramsey, primary school teacher. Bella Baxter. Liz Lockhead, a mother cradling a babe in arms entitled Downhill, Madonna and Child. Margot MacDonald, politician. Mary, Queen of Scots. The construction nodded to a bucolic Renaissance painting with goddesses lounging under trees. I worried that I'd uncovered a stalker's wall of obsession, an artist stalker with a good eye, influenced, I'd say, by William Blake. There were strips of the mural still hidden, where I'd need to soak the paper to get it off, but already the image was impressive. I sat on the floor like an errant puppy amid a pile of tattered paper strips. Then I worried that the landlord would be furious and I'd get into trouble at the museum. Oh God, I whispered, what have I done? Now, when it came to writing this piece, it was important to me that as well as his art, that Alasdair's voice was in the story too. The people we knew in life, whether we knew them personally or because they were important people to us, politicians or writers or commentators, when they die, we can still hear their voices, hopefully not literally, just what they thought. So Alasdair Gray is in the story too. He's a tramp, or at least the narrator at first thinks he's a tramp. I think it's fair to say that Alasdair was not sartorially interested in his appearance. And in the story, he just turns up and he talks to her, and she's from London, so that's like really weird for her. Though here in Glasgow, it's less odd. The best conversations are always random, right? So this is very much part of Celtic culture, and Glasgow is, in my view, Scotland's most Celtic city, not just football, but its west coast. It's very Irish as well as Scottish. I moved to Glasgow myself a couple of years ago. I can say it to you. It's by almost every measure Scotland's best city. I just can't say that at the Edinburgh Festival. So here's a slightly surreal flash of Alasdair from the story, and he actually encourages Marianne, the narrator, to uncover his mural, and then he wants her to make changes to it. Alasdair used to really do this. He was always reworking things, and that was how he worked, by reworking or editing, I guess. And I identify with this strongly. I just rewrote a whole novel that was already published and that had been shortlisted for an award, but I had learned some new stuff, and I had developed, I guess, and it went out of print, and I managed to talk the publisher into a new edition, and I improved the text for that edition, which is out next month. Hurrah. So here's Alasdair. He's beyond the grave, and he's still tinkering with his work, and he wants Marianne to change his mural, and this is Marianne telling us about it. I pulled on a coat and I took my cigarette on a walk round the block. The tramp had gone from the Botanic Gates. I turned back towards the tenement and ground out my cigarette on the pavement with my heel. Just then a taxi wheeled past. In slow motion, it seemed. The window opened and from inside, the tramp waved. "You've got it then. Those squirrels need a touch-up," he shouted, leaning part of the way out. "At least half of it should be a night scene. Stars," he waved. And the taxi receded, not slowing one iota. I walked into the middle of the now deserted road and watched the red light of the brakes glow as the vehicle turned left. I shouted, "Who the hell are you?" High above, a late night light clicked on in someone's bedroom. I skulked guiltily back inside the hallway before anyone could catch me, shamefully shouting in the street like a drunk student. Upstairs, I flicked on the big light and I looked at the squirrels. He was right, of course. Conservation was required, and standing back if half the composition was against a dark backdrop with stars, it would make it more iconic. Oh God, I thought, he wants me to finish it. No spoilers, but in the story, Alasdair doesn't stop there. So the story is called Found, and it mixes this kind of fact and fiction. A story, a fictional story that is basically a convincing lie. You have to bring the reader into your world. They have to believe what you're saying, and here's the rub. They have to believe what you're saying even though you know it's fiction, and they know it's fiction. They know it's not true. And that this is possible in the human brain, and in fact a really enjoyable way to spend your time is kind of wild. But story is my greatest pleasure, and if you're here, it's likely you're the same. I was programmed this one time with one of the Doctor Who writers, Ben Aronovich, and we were in London, and we did this big event in a bookshop, and he has a series about a magical police force. And essentially, he says he gets mail from readers saying his magical content would never work because he's got his magical principles wrong. And I thought, wow, that's a win. I mean, magical police force, right? So I'm actually only trying to convince my readers that they're reading something from actual history most of the time, rather than fictionalized, history. Props to Ben Aronovich. And to Alasdair, who so often wrote convincingly about worlds that cannot be true, things that cannot have happened. In the story I wrote for this commission, the world Marianne inhabits has to be carefully drawn. She's English, so she's experiencing Scotland for the first time. She's only visited once before for a weekend, and she gets a job, actually, while she's here, writing an academic article about the different kinds of paper that artists use. She's a conservator, so this is within her remit. And the article that she writes is about value. And that's important because Alasdair's work has come into some value more recently. His paintings and his first editions are worth much, much more these days. So what denotes value? Ultimately, for me as a writer, value is an interface where the quality of the craft meets the market. Value is a market issue, financial value in a way. And you can extrapolate that out because cultural value is about where the quality of the craft meets people's understanding, often people's understanding of themselves. So ultimately, as a writer, it's about being able to connect with people, to comment on their world in one way or another. And it's about successfully convincing people that what you're saying, your story, has a higher, more important meaning than just a story. And that means it's about impact and also about relevance. So in terms of cultural longevity, it's about being able to do that over time, because some work dates. We've all seen this, right? Enid Blyton, she knows it well. So books we loved as a kid that date, meanings or perceptions of things that change. Something that seems glamorous or interesting that isn't glamorous and interesting outside of its moment. And that's actually another reason why the Alasdair Gray Archive is important. It is actively concerned with making that connection between Alasdair's work and its relevance today. As I said at the beginning, I spend a lot of time in archives, and the work that Sorcha and her team are doing is extraordinary. They are developing Alasdair Gray content for use in Scottish schools, for the curriculum in primary schools. They are connecting the existing creative world of Scotland with Alasdair's legacy. That's why I'm here. That's why all the creatives who've been commissioned are here. And the archive is making connections through university students working in history and conservation and creative writing, all the important things. And all this proves the relevance of Alasdair's legacy. For me, one of the most important things Alasdair ever said, he sort of said it in the film there, was about Glasgow. He said, if you live in Paris or New York or London, you've seen those cities before 1,000 times, you've read about them, you've seen them in paintings and on TV and in cinema, and you know that they are glamorous, complicated places, and you accept that these places have 1,000 stories to tell you. In Glasgow, until pretty recently, and I'd say mostly until even now, The city's poverty in the late 19th and early 20th century is the only story that has generally been allowed to be told. So a friend of mine was over from LA last summer to a wedding in the Highlands, and he phoned me and he said he wanted to catch up. He thought I still lived in Edinburgh. And I said, oh, I've moved to Glasgow, and you should come down for lunch. And he said, Glasgow? And he was really shocked. He said, haven't you read Shuggie Bain? And that's the story that we're allowed to tell about Glasgow. That's all anybody knows. And it's partly a true story. It's not a lie, but there's a lot more to it. Alasdair's work challenges that, and actually my work challenges that too. And when I moved here a couple of years ago, we moved into the city centre, and even people within Glasgow were shocked that someone would want to live in the city centre rather than the West End. Glasgow's still scarred very much by the poverty and the slums, and people from here can't believe you'd move back into the city, even though the flats are amazing, I'm just saying. Even though the transport links are great and there are fab restaurants, people from Glasgow are not having it, and they say, like, what about Sauchiehall Street and the bins? So the short story I wrote here isn't the only way I've used Alasdair Gray in my work. He kind of inspired a 5-part radio play I wrote last year for BBC Radio 4. It's called Robert Burns, His Psychotherapy and Cure. And in it, Elaine C. Smith plays a long-suffering psychotherapist who's in her office in Glasgow one day when Robert Burns walks in, and she decides effectively he's deluded and she's going to cure him. And that's the story, but the setting is present-day Glasgow, and I wrote the play as a love letter, really, to the city, because I do love it. Gray's Glasgow is nuanced and clever. It's a unique place, and there isn't enough creative work that shows that side of the city. And the play is up on BBC Sounds if you want to hear it. Elaine is amazing. She brought it to life. So when I was in the archive, you know, the most inspirational thing for me was hearing people's memory of him, of Alasdair. In other archives, you're lucky to find that at all, and you'd love it. I mean, what Charlotte Bronte thought of Jane Austen, wouldn't that be great if we could get hold of that? So a lot of the observations about Gray in the story that I wrote in come from people who knew him, alongside my own impressions, which were fleeting because I only bumped into him a few times. And, do you know, he never remembered me from one time to the next. Hey-ho. I was in the hairdresser this morning, and I got chatting to a guy. I was sitting in the waiting area, and it was a guy who knew Alasdair Gray. He said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to the Òran Mór tonight to talk about Alasdair Gray. And he said, I used to just live up the road from Alasdair Gray. So all of Alasdair's still out there. He's not just in the archive. This guy told me a great story, and it's not written into the speech. I only heard it today, so I'm going to tell you it. He used to work in a bar around here, and it was a cocktail bar. And on the counter, they had these big bowls of oranges and lemons and fruit that they were going to use in the cocktail. And Alasdair used to come in and say, it's fantastic, you're giving away free fruit. That's such a good thing to do. And he'd take loads of the oranges and apples and stuff and just put them in his pocket and leave. I love him so much for that. So anyway, I'm going to finish with another short reading from Found. This is what happens to the mural in the story, and we know to what the archive is doing. And again, it's in the voice of Marianne, the narrator. Before the landlord had the mural removed from the flat, the custodian of the Alasdair Gray Archive came to see it. She sat for a long time over a cooling mug of tea, just staring. He never finished, she said wistfully. He kept working on things over and over. I couldn't help think that perhaps he still was. I watched her take photographs as the mural changed with the sun crossing the sky. He'd have liked what you'd done, she said. I didn't tell her about the old guy. I don't want to end up in an institution. But I felt like nobody knew Gray's work better than this woman, and it was good she'd given the amendments the thumbs up. As we stood in front of the mural at last, she pronounced, there are images of people here we didn't know he'd painted. Afterwards, I heard a collector paid a 6-figure sum to have the mural installed in a private gallery. The living room was replastered just before my stuff arrived in a van from London, and that's how I ended up moving 500 miles further north than I expected. In the end, I found Glasgow, and Glasgow found me, and at my age, that's the closest to romance I'm likely to get. thank you for listening to me talk about Alasdair's work and my creative intersection with it, about voice, about value. I'm happy to see so many people here today. I feel like his work is spreading wider and wider. My husband was taught creative writing by Alasdair when he was at Glasgow University in the late 1970s. And at that time, Alasdair was looked on as a kind of impenetrable genius, I think. But he's not impenetrable. He's just really important. If you haven't been to the archive and you'd like to see it, as Sorcha said earlier, perhaps sit in Alasdair's now famous green velvet chair, then you can make an appointment. And I hope you enjoy reading or listening to Found half as much as I enjoyed writing it, which is a very great deal.
The wonderful Sara Sheridan there. How about that story? Is this on? Is this on? I'm not going to sing, don't worry. I seem awful far away from you. I don't want to be over there.
You're too far away.
I want to be beside
I miss you. I miss you.
I miss you already. I love that. Can I just say, I love the fact that even today, like this very morning, we're still hearing these new tales about Alasdair.
I didn't expect this guy to know me. He was just sitting there, and then it just all came out because people want to tell you about Alasdair.
And you know that thing about him having a painterly way, which he absolutely did in his writing? I could even see that. You're telling us a story, I could see the colours. And again, it's just inhabiting Glasgow in this different way. You mentioned, we're just going to have a quick blather, then there will be, I believe, a little interval, then there will be comedy. But you moved to Glasgow a couple of years ago.
Yes.
We'll maybe just touch very briefly on the secrets of Blytheswood Square, because there's something about the way you see the city, and maybe the way you've delved into it, which very much reflects Alasdair Gray's endless curiosity, but also found, and the secrets of Blytheswood Square also both share another common theme, which is hidden erotica.
Yeah. So one of the secrets of Blytheswood Square is a hidden erotic cupboard with lots of huge erotic collection that a very straight-laced, wee-free heiress gets hold of. And she discovers this cupboard and she just doesn't know how to get rid of this art. Like, she's horrified, and she finds that she has to, delve into this world in Glasgow that she's never been in before and find people who can help her, because she obviously can't ask the minister, which is where she'd normally go for advice. So it was really good. It was really interesting to write Glasgow as well as a city that was defined by religion, because it's a cathedral city, and a city that was really bougie. Because this book's set in 1846, and Glasgow's really wealthy. There are a lot of people, there's a lot of inventors and people who are enthusiastic. They're just about to dredge the Clyde. And so delving into that Glasgow, which I hadn't known so much about because it isn't really talked about so much, and doing the research for that was really exciting.
But I also love the fact that you touched on within your story and your chat there how well you feel, and I think many of us believe this, Alasdair wrote female characters, because you have spent so much of your life and your mind, delving into stories that aren't told. And I mean, also on social media, we can't really call it that thing, but you used to put these brilliant threads on Twitter just revealing all these wonderful stories that
the stories that hadn't been
about
told.
women. So for you, I think, to really feel so convinced by Alasdair, it's...
Listen, it's not every dead man, white guy, creative artist that I would come up and talk about. Like, I would turn it down. But Alasdair...
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, Alasdair knew. Like, he knew, and he saw people as people. He felt you, and that was it. So I'm really happy to have been involved. Yeah. But yeah, I turned stuff down for most of the dead white guys.
I love the fact that also that pub was given him his sustenance. That probably kept Alasdair going, that free food for years, actually, didn't it?
Yeah, he probably got extra vitamins.
And he's kind of jammy pockets,
yeah,
shirts.
He was in there every day, getting a wee orange.
That's it, apples and oranges. Well, listen, thank you so much. And yet you can read and you can hear, nonetheless, Sara's full version of Found. There was a QR code, but you can find it online as well. There it is. Look at that. My head wasn't in the way. Sorry. God almighty, the last thing you need. Anyway, we're going to have a brief break. Sorcha will let me know how long that can be, and then we'll come back. Loads more performances to come. Thank you so much for listening and just for being here. Thanks again to Sara Sheridan. What a woman. Secrets of Blytheswood Square is at the shop. Have you charged your glasses? Have you been to that wonderful shop? It's brilliant up there. All sorts of brilliant reading materials. if there are any mugs left, move fast. They're absolutely brilliant. And thank you again for joining us. It is Grady. My name is Nicola Meighan. We've already had wonderful, wonderful thoughts and discussions from Sara Sheridan and her creative response. There's loads of comedy to come. Alan Bissett, Ashley Storrie, Christopher Macarthur-Boyd. Yeah, I think we need a cheer again. You're right, we've got our practice. What are we thinking? Louder as well, it's later and you're back at the bar, so you've got no excuse. However, before all the comedy, we have got another absolute treat because yes, the creative commissions and the creative responses to Alasdair's work are infinite and they're all really, really exciting. And we are going to have some animation. So back in 2014, I touched on this earlier, Scottish composer and musician Scott Twynholm, who also played in glorious bands, by the way, and you should listen to them all, Hoboken, Looper, the list goes on. And his film work includes Bill Douglas, My Best Friend, and Murder Trial. Anyway, he soundtracked Kevin Cameron's gorgeous Alasdair Gray documentary, A Life in Progress. The score that Scott worked on incorporated recordings of Alasdair Gray's voice, which has already been ringing out in this building this very evening. And now communication design students at Glasgow School of Art have taken that as an inspiration jumping off point for a series of new animation commissions from the Alasdair Gray Archive. This is supported by tutors Mark Baines and Ross Hogg. And we're about to see them, and do you know what? I think they deserve a round of applause before we even have done, just for being wonderful. And thank you to Scott Twynholm. Glorious music, as always. I'll get out your way, and then we'll have some comedy.
I've always felt that stories and pictures were a way of keeping people I knew alive and as they were. Portraits, for instance, you know, that show people young or middle-aged long after they're dead and keep them remembered long after they're forgotten, I hope. And the same if you make people characters in stories. Anybody who has seen a lot of my work, book illustrative designs, mural paintings, will find certain faces and figures keep coming up in them. Certain symbolic or emblematic figures like the winged embryo inside the skull, which for me is a way of reconciling life and death, because showing that death contains new life and all life passes through death to take on a new form. Many such figures I use and recycle, and many mottos. Work as if you lived in the early days of a better nation. I got that from Dennis Lee, a Canadian poet, and it seemed to me such a good idea, such a good way of approaching your own work, seeing yourself as something early and something that can be made better.
What are we? What are we? are we from? Where are we going? What are we? Where are we from? Where are we going? Animals want more than we eat. Where are we from? Life is rooted in Death's Republic. Where are we going? Our seed returns to Death's Republic. Where are we going? Animals want more than we eat. Where are we from? Life is rooted in Death's Republic. Where are we going? Our seed returns to Death's Republic. These cheery sentiments should inspire. Creatures shall be seen in the earth who will always be fighting one another, with the greatest losses and frequent deaths on either side. By their strong limbs the vast forests of the world shall be laid low, and when they are filled with food they shall gratify their desires by dealing out death, affliction, labour, terror and banishment to every living thing. Nothing shall remain on the earth or under the earth or in the waters that shall not be pursued, disturbed or spoiled, and that which is in one country removed into another. And their bodies shall be made the tomb and means of transit of all the living bodies they have slain. O earth, why do you not open and hurl them into the deep fissures of your vast abysses and caverns, and no longer display in the sight of heaven so cruel and horrible a monster? Good for you, Leo.
Pianist went sailing on the sea. A pianist went sailing over the blue. A pianist, he entered a lofty vessel side, and his tuneful instrument went with him too. He played in that gallant vessel's hold. He played on the bosom of the wave. He so charmed that lofty ship with his many merry tunes, that they docked feeling comforted and brave. travelled a very long way. I've been where no bird has flown. I have been and I've returned, well cradled in your arms. And my sleep is now the deepest I have known. My sleep is now the deepest I have known. My sleep is now the deepest I have known.
Oh, utterly wonderful were they. Let's hear it again. This is from the communication design students at GSA, these incredible animations. Scott Twynholm's music as well. You know, it's been lovely as well. I was obviously watching them, but I was also looking out at your faces, and I love the fact that everyone's smiling watching this and everyone's laughing watching this. And I think with Sarah's short story as well, and the excerpt of that, the kind of humour in Alasdair Gray's work on the page and his painting and his performance and his plays everywhere just absolutely rings true. And we're going to celebrate all of that right now. This is because of a collaboration between the Alasdair Gray Archive and Glasgow International Comedy Festival. We need a cheer again, I think. We just do. Very important. Yeah, I think it just chimes with so much that we know and love about Alasdair's work. The next three performers have absolutely taken that spirit and creativity within Alasdair Gray's work and imagination within it and totally run with it. You're going to be seeing, as we've mentioned already, scratch performances tonight. You can see them again, longer, at Glasgow International Comedy Festival here on the 23rd of March. And maybe sometimes after that as well. I might tell you about that a wee bit later. So yes, and thanks to Glasgow 850 Festival Fund for supporting these commissions. We're going to hear from Christopher Macarthur-Boyd. We're going to hear from Ashley Storrie. Cheers, by the way. Don't be rude. Thank you. I've just realised that I was about to take all of the paper off of this lectern, and I would be very, very unpopular if I did that because of my next guest. Because first up, in the comedy strand, the mighty playwright, novelist, and performer Alan Bissett. I should say, incidentally, he is also touring his utterly brilliant Moira monologues next month all over Scotland. But in the meantime, he's going to be here performing an excerpt of his terrific new work. It really is. I've had the chance to read it, and I fell in love with it. And it imagines the tale of when Alasdair Gray met Billy Connolly. So the Glasgow icons' paths did cross. There's a photo of them both together in the launch of Lanark, in fact, Third Eye Centre, 1981. You can see that picture at the Alasdair Gray Archive, incidentally. And that image is at the heart of Alan's brilliant new play. It is wonderful. He's going to perform an excerpt of it tonight, if I leave his script on the lectern, before I run at the Edinburgh Fringe. I'm going to be there every single day. And yes, back here, Òran Mór, 23rd of March. Next month. In the meantime, everything's safe. His glasses are here. Alasdair Gray, Billy Connolly, imagine this, and Alan Bissett. Woo!
There's this feeling you have that even a false picture of you is more interesting than no picture at all. But I would like to begin by telling you about the falseness of this picture. Because though some parts of it will be less false than others, the whole of it will still be, well, very false indeed. In the first place, you've probably got an idea about me. You've probably got an idea about the way I talk. And that is a false idea altogether. I don't talk, for instance, like this with friends. I don't even talk like this with strangers. This is how I talk to an audience. And as a result, of course, you know nothing about how I normally talk. I think that's probably enough for now.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for coming. It's nice to see so many familiar faces in my own front room at this wee reminder of one's rapidly fading fucking mortality. Oh, Stallone, put the fucking video camera down. I'm off duty. Just put it down, or Ben Kingsley here will come up and biff you. All that stuff about Gandhi being a pacifist. You should see this bastard after 9 pints. Oh, yous are wanting a speech as well. Jesus God. Where do you think I am? The Hollywood Bowl. Well, what can I say? Here I am, 60 years old today, with hair like Rita Hayworth and a brain like a fucking colander. There's certain things they don't tell you about getting old, like why the fuck you need nasal hair to deal with it, or why you make that noise every time you bend down to pick something up. It's been a fucking strange trip, let me tell you. Pamela published a book about it last year, didn't you, Pamsy? Had me on the psychoanalyst couch and everything. Tell me about your mother. God, where do I even start with that? But if it wasn't for you, Pamela, well, I wouldn't be here, to be honest with you. Remember, Pamela, we were circling each other a wee bit, round about 1981. Both of our marriages had fell to bits. I was drinking too much, being the Glasgow hard man come show his personality. That is my want. She wasn't too sure that she wanted to go steady with me yet. And if you remember, Pamela, I called you for a phone box in Sucky Hill Street in Glasgow. A bit pissed, you know, because I'd been at that launch party for Alasdair Gray. Who's Alasdair Gray? He's hearing this from Clapton here. Who's Alasdair Gray? They used to call you God, Eric. You're supposed to know everything. Alasdair Gray, Jesus, he's a wee chubby Glaswegian genius. Wrote a novel called Lanark, which is a total headfuck, by the way. It's about that thick. If you dropped it, you'd break every bone in your foot. So the night I phoned Pamela to ask her out, I was at the book launch for Lanark in the Third Eye Centre in Glasgow. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go to a book launch because I thought, well, it might be full of wankers. And I was a bit depressed about me and the wife, you know, but some pals of mine were going, guys I knew for the folk scene at Whistle Binkies. And I thought, oh, fuck it. At least I'll be free bevy. Lanark. What a book. I've got it somewhere. Oh, there it is there. I mean, look at this beast of a thing. It could eat you alive. Look at these beautiful illustrations. He designed it himself. I told you, he's a fucking genius. Wait till you hear this, right? It's made up of 4 books. Starts with book 3, obviously. You've got this guy, Lanark, in this weird version of Glasgow called Unthank. You've got this other guy, this artist called Duncan Thaw in actual Glasgow. He goes insane, kills his cell, and you realise that Lanark is actually the same person as Duncan Thaw. And the Unthank is like the afterlife. And there's this crazy bit where Lanark goes into a room, and there's Alasdair Gray fucking typing away. And Alasdair tells Lanark that he's fictional, which makes you think, well, maybe we're all fucking fictional. Maybe we've all been dreamed up in the imagination of some mental writer god. I told you, it's fucking mad. Enid Blyton, it most assuredly is not. Here's all you Hollywood bastards here, and not one of you has ever made a film in it. This book is considered the best novel ever written in Scotland. I mean, you, Cruz, what have you been doing with your time, son?
For many years, I would probably have said my most constant companion in life was, well, my own imagination. As well, of course, as my own penis. Both provided for me where others could not. But the latter was also the source of most of my frustration, as I could never get another human to satisfy it the way I could rather too easily on my own. Throughout my teenage years, it became apparent to me that though girls liked to pet me, none would consider me as a romantic partner. That said, I was soon to find out that literary fame was, for some girls, sufficient to put one on something of a pedestal. During the Edinburgh Festival in 1961, when I was 26 years of age, I met an 18-year-old Swedish girl. I was performing in a revue at the time called Festival Late, and part of my act involved going from table to table, sketching people on the spot. When I arrived at her table, she was more than happy to be sketched, and I was more than happy to sketch her. I suppose at the time I must have seemed to an 18-year-old girl a rather glamorous species, a man on the rise. That particular month, I was every bit the performer, bounding around the stage with confidence. We were married after 2 weekends, since she told me she would not have sex unless I proposed to her. And at the age of 26, I was rather keen to finally have sex. However, once we were married, she soon came to know a rather different Alasdair Gray, a more asthmatic one, who stumbles, stutters, and is constantly scratching at his eczema. Our only child was born in 1963, and we separated in 1965. She moved out, taking our son with her. I shall spare you the details. But suffice it to say, it is little wonder that some of those who have studied my novel, Lanark, attribute the condition of dragonhide from which the character of Lanark suffers as symbolic of the absence of love.
Oh, here's Cher! Finally! Oh no, don't worry, Cher. I was just killing time until you got here. I'm telling everybody about the night I went to Alasdair Gray's book launch. Who's Alasdair Gray? Fuck's sake, know you as well, hen. Right, just strap yourself in. I'm sure you'll catch up. So, everything was going pretty well in my career, all the way through the first half of the 70s. I was touring all over Scotland, all over England. But then in 1975, I appeared on Parkinson, which was the biggest chat show in the UK at the time. And I told a joke that my manager begged me not to tell about this guy who goes down to the pub and says to his pal, "Oh, hello, how's it going?" He says, "Fine." He says, "How's the wife?" He says, "Oh, she's dead." He says, "What?" He says, "Dead, aye, out the game, shh, murdered her." He says, "You're kidding me on." He says, "No, this morning, shh, dead, forget it." He says, "Look, I'm not talking to you if you're going to be like this." He says, "Well, fair enough, that's up to you, but I'll show you if you want." He says, "Aye, show me." So they go through the tenement building, through the close. That's the access to the tenement. Into the back green, into the wash house, and sure enough, there's a big mound of earth, but there's a bum sticking out of it. He says, "Is that her?" "Aye." He says, "Well, what did you leave her bum sticking out for?" He says, "Oh, I needed somewhere to park my bike." And after that, things fucking exploded. I was selling out night after night, not just in the UK, but in Canada, Australia, America, everywhere. Every fucking Scot who's ever emigrated and could still stand upright was coming out to see me. Hey, diddle-dee-dee, it's the windswept and interesting life of a showbiz personality for me. And to top it all off, I was fucking loaded. There's no better feeling than getting into a shop and saying, "I'll have one of the large ones." Dustin here knows what I'm talking about. But you know, I was also married and I started a family who I hardly ever saw because I was on tour all the time. So I dealt with it by just drinking. My philosophy was, if I could lie on the floor without hanging on, that I wasn't drunk enough. The trick was to never let my hangover catch up with me. Just stay pissed. Every tour had a different drink. There was the gin tour, the wine tour, the beer tour. After about a month of this, drinking every day, hardly getting any sleep, packing, unpacking, travelling, performing, you go into this kind of dream state. It's like swimming through a shoal of fish. Nothing seems real about it. The world becomes kind of blurry, you know. The real world, where disease and unemployment and unhappiness live, not to mention responsibility. That was away over there. I was in my cocoon of applause and booze. There was one night I had to call my manager at 2 a.m. because I was trapped in a fucking phone box. I'm like, let me out. I can't find the door. He's like, there's only 4 sides and one of them's got a phone on it. He had to drive around London looking at all these phone boxes till he eventually found me slumped in one of them. Then at the end of the tour, after months of this, you finally go home. And it's lovely to see your family again, but, you know, you can never get fucking room service on the phone. After my wife moved out of her flat in Kersland Street, I was rather forced to take in lodgers, some of whom were amenable, some of whom were less so. One of them tormented me all night with his radio. I was trying to write, but all I could hear was this really loud music. So the next day, I went to this noisy bugger's room, took his radio and threw it out of the window, whereupon it smashed to smithereens. Well, it turned out that it wasn't actually him who'd had his radio on all night. The sound had been coming from a different room, a different lodger. I'd thrown out the wrong radio. So in order to demonstrate my remorse to this young man, I allowed him to accompany me to my own room, to witness me throwing my own radio out of the window. Upon which he said, rather reasonably, "Why didn't you just give that radio to me?" It would have been, I admit, a rather more elegant solution. When I wasn't painting, my pleasures included giving money away, reading books by people I didn't have to meet, and daytime drinking. Sometimes this daytime drinking would carry on into the evenings. Often I would promise to go to the flat of my new girlfriend, Bethsy, but after several large whiskies, I'd forget. And she would wait and get annoyed with me. Then when I did turn up very late and very drunk, we would argue. She would make a mean face, but in the end, let me in. After all, I hadn't meant to be cruel. I was also sending Lanark to publishers in the hope that they might finally shepherd it out into the world. They did not. Largely because of my paintings and short stories, I was already what might be called a local personality, a working artist and playwright, a success in many people's eyes, though I had no money and was living a basic, penniless existence. I felt a great sense of failure. Even if others admired my talents, it meant nothing to me because I had no money and had not yet found the success that I wanted. I had, in short, nothing. Friends found excuses to feed me, as though afraid that I wouldn't feed myself. This is mainly because, oftentimes, I wouldn't. Around this time, I wrote a poem called Wanting. I am newborn. I want to suck sweet and sing and eat and laugh and run and fuck and feel secure and own my own home and receive the recognition due to a man in my position and not have nobody to care for me and die. When I was away, there was these old air raid shelters, 10 feet high, and we used to dare each other to leap between them or off them. We had different names for different jumps. There was the wee suey, suey meaning suicide, and the big suey. The wee Suey was a jump from one of the air raid shelters onto a midden, or trash heap, as you Americans might call it. But the big Suey, that was where it was at. Massive 5-foot gap like that. You had to run like hell in order to clear it. I did the big Suey when I was 9. Can still remember the run up to it and leaping off into the air and hanging there suspended for a second like fucking Wile E. Coyote and looking down and you've no idea if you're going to make it. Then landing at the other side and everybody bursting into applause. I became a fucking folk hero among every child in Partick, which certainly prepared me for later in life, you know. And as you all know, this is what it's like being a performer. That intense fear and panic, then the surge of adrenaline when you jump into the unknown and take the stage, and then this highly enjoyable rush of endorphins, and finally, if it's all gone well, the validation when you land at the other side and the applause just ring it out for ages. That lasts for a few hours. But if you noticed in the morning, there's this sense of loss. All the adrenaline and the endorphins have drained away and you feel a bit empty. And you start tormenting yourself about things you get wrong the night before and you start fretting about the show the next night, which is where cocaine comes in. Am I right, Robin? A quick, that'll do me. Now, round about this time, this is about 1980, I met the lovely Pamela Stevenson. Step forwards, Pamela. Look at how beautiful this woman is. We did that sketch together in Not the 9 o'clock News. Remember, Pamsy? You were playing Janet Street Porter. I'm talking to Billy Connolly, a well-known Scottish comedian. Billy, I understand that when you first came to England, people had a lot of trouble understanding your accent. Is that right? Sorry? And after that, we started to get to know each other and quite like each other. But she said to me that I seemed to be filled with, what was that phrase you used, Pamsy? A terrible hopelessness. I mean, talk about dramatic. I don't blame her, though, given the first night she came to my hotel room, I proceeded to drink 30 brandies and pass out. That was the brandy tour. To be quite honest, folks, I was pitiful at the time. Your classic Glaswegian self-destructive drunk. I was taking too much coke. My marriage was falling to pieces. Any time I thought of the future, I just wanted to die, to be quite honest with you. I mean, is that not what any woman wants for a romantic partner? Morning, darling. Right, shall I go and make the breakfast? Oh, I forgot I was telling you about Alasdair Gray's book launch. I mean, I'd been jumping the big fucking Suey every day at this point, right? It's 1981, and like I say, everything's falling to bits. I've met Pamela, but she's no sure she wants to come out because I'm a total fucking heat case. So it goes along with the Whistle Binkies crowd to the Third Eye Centre in Sucky Hall Street in the hope of a free bevy, and there he is, Alasdair Gray, wee chubby fella, glasses, in the middle of a speech. This is a day which many have suspected might never come. One wonders if the world is finally ready for Lanark, or indeed, if Lanark is finally ready for the world. It wasn't ready 30 years ago when I first came up with the idea for it. It wasn't ready 17 years ago when a large chunk of it was rejected by a publisher. It wasn't ready 5 years ago when several publishers showed an interest, but only if books 1 and 2 were issued separately from books 3 and 4. Now, thanks to Stephanie Wolfe-Murray at Canongate, Lanark, A Life in 4 Books, finally exists. As a boy, I had noticed that my works were childish, and I had wished for a life's experience in order to represent it convincingly on the page. Here in 1981, and at 47 years of age, I have now lived that life. I now feel that this copy, which I hold in my hand, is my true body with my soul inside, and that the animal you all know as Alasdair Gray is a redundant form of afterbirth.
I do rather enjoy that sensation. One piece of advice. As you are reading the novel, you may find that you are feeling rather peculiar. This is nothing to worry about and means you are in the early stages of contracting Lanark. It is usually the result of careless contact with booksellers, such as we have here. The first sign of it is the painful parting of money, usually followed by dilation of the pupils. If caught early enough, there is seldom any danger, but once the person becomes a carrier, the condition can be easily passed on. There is nothing to be ashamed of in contracting Lanark, although it is incurable. Many sufferers still manage to lead a normal and healthy life. The important thing is not to worry and to drink heavily. I thought, fuck, I like him already. So I took a copy of the book and goes over to get it signed. He's standing there like a wee Buddha. So I hands him my book. Hello, I says, you'll be Alasdair Gray. And you'll be Sir William of Connolly. Well, that means a great deal for somebody coming for yourself. And it means a great deal to me, Billy, that you are here. Och, no, I just got up and try not to fart and fall over. So what's your book about then, Alasdair? Well, let me see. How can I put this? It's my Scottish petit bourgeois model of the universe, my portrait of the artist as a young man, and my Ulysses combined, my divine commedia. It also makes for a rather handy doorstop. I was just thinking, if somebody tries to mug me on the way home, I can brain them with it. Haha, quite. One never wishes to presume, but are you a reader, Billy? Aye, I am actually. My favourite book is White Fang, Jack London. When I was wee, I'd imagine donning a huge woolly jacket and striding off into the northern wilderness to pan for gold. It was better than being in the house, anyway. Aha, literature as escape, a concept with which I am familiar. Well, we grew up in Glasgow in the 1950s, Alasdair. Let's be honest, there was plenty to escape for. So, have you got a girlfriend, Alasdair? I'd like to maybe go and congratulate her on having such a ravishing Adonis as myself for a lover. No, on Lanark. Well, Bethsy is here somewhere, but she didn't write Lanark, Billy. No, but let's be honest, they have to put up with a lot for us, don't they? It's certainly not without their difficulties for them. Or for us. Agreed. You have a wife, I presume? No for much longer. Spend 15 years touring every venue in the English-speaking world and every night pissed. There's no a lot left when you go home, know what I'm saying? The phrase long-suffering was invented for a reason. Another concept with which I am familiar. There's somebody else in the picture, but I think I might have fucked things up before it's even started, you know. Well, Sir William, if you will allow me to offer you a word of advice by way of Lanark, A Life in 4 Books. What's your advice? Now, let me see. It's in chapter 2 somewhere. Oh, see if I can find it. Oh, look. Look. Look at what? Look. The cross was a place where several broad streets met, and she could see down 2 of them, though the dark had made it difficult to see far. And now, about a mile away, where the streets reached the crest of a wide, shallow hill, each was silhouetted against a pearly paleness. Most of the sky was still black, for the paleness did not reach above the tenement roofs, so it seemed that 2 little days were starting, one at the end of each street. Rima said again, look at what? Hey, Alasdair, where's the advice? Don't you see it? Can't you see that? What's the word? There was once a special word for it. Rima looked in the direction of his forefinger and said coldly, are you talking about the light in the sky? Dawn. That's what it was called. Dawn. Come again. You asked me earlier what Lanark was about. Well, across its 4 books, 44 chapters, 563 pages, and 200,000 words. It is the story of two men. They live in different worlds, yet both worlds are Glasgow. Each man is the alter ego of the other. One man is searching for love, the other is searching for the light. Well, that's very profound, Alasdair. I hope it helps. Aye, it does. Now, would you like me to autograph your copy for posterity? Aye, on you go. Right, to posterity. I hope you have a happy birthday. Here you are. I'll even draw a little picture of you if you'd like. Thanks very much. This is my most windswept and interesting pose. Enjoy your evening, Billy. You too, Alasdair. But before I go, can I give you a piece of advice? By all means. Lie on your back. That way you won't squash your nose. So after the launch, I went out to this phone box in Suckyhill Street and called Pamela. I told her, I suppose if you're falling in love with a drunken weirdo, you've got to give it a good deal of thought. But if it's all right with you, I would like you to give it a good deal of thought. Now here we are, Pamsy, 20 years later. So you would all like to join me in a toast to my beautiful wife, Pamela Stevenson, and to Mr. Alasdair Gray, who helped me to find the light. At the start of this play, I told you that what you were about to see was false. While it is true that Mr. Connolly attended the launch for Lanark, and that I did indeed sign his book, no one but myself and Billy knows what we spoke about, and one of us is already dead. The author of this play has invented this discussion for his own purposes and to explicate his own themes. That is a prerogative of any artist. I am willing to be a resource, however, only in the correct circumstances, to bring us all closer to the light. Now, I shall bid you farewell in this voice which is not mine, from my own personal unthank somewhere on the other side. Hopefully, I shall see all of you again someday. Goodbye.
Performing an excerpt of When Billy Met Alasdair. Let's hear it again. That was absolutely stunning. Alan Bissett! I had read it, and I did love it, but it was completely different to see it up here and in these voices. And also, I love the fact, incidentally, that already, and we've still got 2 more performances to come, there have been 2 separate responses to Alasdair Gray's work this very evening that have featured exposed bums. Sara Sheridan's and Alan Bissett's. Don't know what that says about any of us or Alasdair, but I love it, whatever it is. Anyway, yes, you can catch Alan next month at Glasgow International Comedy Festival, March the 23rd, did I say? I better have this date right, by the way. I've said it enough times, have I? Yeah. Looking at someone else to blame them. It is, it's fine. And then Alan's going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe performing a longer version of that, which is equally stunning, I have no doubt. Anyway, lots still to come. And next up, I'm so excited about this. Is a digital response from actor, writer, comedian, and Scottish BAFTA Award winner Ashley Storrie. Can we have a cheer for all that, please? Rightly so. Ashley, in her response, was drawn to Alasdair's wild and weird and utterly wonderful visual universe, and she's created a digital response to the murals around her hometown, Glasgow City, whatever we call it, the dear green place. Ashley has dug deep on the murals, and of course they do still define and enliven the city in many ways. I wanted to hear it for Ashley, and for this digital response, and for this title, A Little Shade of Grey.
I know everything about Alasdair Gray. Go, ask me anything at all.
What do you think about Alasdair's symbiotic relationship with the city that loves him?
No, that, ask me something else. It's Glasgow's 850th birthday, and what better way to celebrate that birthday than celebrate the man who captured Glasgow in paint and words and photographs, Alasdair Gray. He was a hunk in this picture. Do you know what? He was a hunk all the time, but specifically in this picture. All right. I think Alasdair might be the official portrait painter of Glasgow. He always got her for the best angle. Look! Shagging skeletons. I bet you that sounds like a xylophone. I travelled to the West End of Glasgow, which is hoaching with art and rich people. And champagne socialists give me wind. Pardon me. We're here at the Western Baths. This is where I saw my first non-familial penis. It was a boy called here at the Western Baths on a Sunday. They used to have naked swimming. I don't know if that's a thing that they still do anymore. My friend, her mum, didn't tell my mum that it was naked swimming when she brought me here. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been allowed. But was on a trapeze and he was ginger, and it was the first time I saw ginger pubes. Anyhow, let's go and see Alasdair's work. Wow! This is Alasdair Gray's octagonal mosaic. Lots of activities here representing what's available. You've got trapeze, you've got lion down, you've got this guy who's just having a bad day and wants to cuddle up in a ball, and haven't we all felt like that? Not a Veruca sock in sight. Do you know why? They've got a Veruca pool here. Facts. Alasdair Gray was in residence at the Western Baths from 2011 until 2013. I don't know if that means he lived here or if he was just hanging about for 2 years. You don't get an artist in residence at other swimming pools. You don't get an artist in residence at the Playdrome. The mosaic reflects the things available at the Western Baths, like rings and trapezes. And the Western Baths is one of only 3 swimming pools in Scotland where you can do trapezing. I'm sure that was the big sell for Alasdair because he was known to enjoy circus skills. These guys, I like to imagine their brothers high-fiving each other because they've just won a swimming race. And that woman's got wind. It's a great position to get it out. I don't know what the system of payment was here. Alasdair was into the barter system, so I don't know if he did 1 tile per week of membership at the Western Baths because it's pricey, so he might have done. I do hope they didn't make him pay membership after he'd done that. That'd be cheeky. My favourite memory of Ashton Lane is walking down and seeing Alasdair Gray sitting outside his favourite drinking hole, the ubiquitous Chip. You know, I've been fingered in nearly every bar in this lane. Facts. Well, that's one of my favourite memories. I very distinctly remember him and a bunch of old guys would all sit outside and try to sign into each other's Sky thing so that they could watch the football. And my mum knew them, and she'd be like, Ashley, Moran helped them sign in to steal football. The one sad thing is Alasdair Gray didn't live to see the dodgy fire stick. He'd have loved that. Oh! Here we have some of Alasdair's murals in front of a small pond in a restaurant, but you're not allowed to throw money in it. I won't do it again. They don't like it when you do that. There's fish. Look at the size of that monkey's feet. It's giving the baby into trouble for touching the plugs. Try to feed the fish. Here we are in the staircase that features Alasdair's mural and paintings and portraits. These were painted from 1979 to 1982. Alasdair was struggling for money, and in return for meals, he'd paint these pictures of the patrons and the staff and the people who frequented this fancy pub down in Ashton Lane. Oh, that's Michael Caine. Not a lot of people know that. If Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen did this in changing rooms, it's fine in a pub, but if you came back to your house and it was covered in birds and pictures of all guys who used to drink in a pub, you'd be raging.
My next stop was Òran Mór, where Alasdair Gray painted the ceiling, and he didn't even get into trouble.
There are representations of the Zodiac up on the roof. He painted it himself. It's like the Sistine Chapel of Glasgow. It's colourful, it's noisy. It's not exactly what he started out intending to paint. In 2004, he just wanted to paint some stars on the ceiling, but then, much like Alasdair is wont to do, he got carried away. Unfortunately, he never got to finish this ceiling. There's some cherubs over there without faces, but huge knockers. Then you've got the family tree, where you've got the lady in the middle, who could be a granny, but she could be a nanny. The difference is in your yearly income. Animals who want more than we need. We're a wasteful bunch. Tell you what Alasdair Gray didn't waste. Any blue paint. He clearly bought a lot of it and wanted to use it all, and I'm glad he did. We're in Alasdair Gray Archive, and it's like he's been trapped in amber. It's who he is, his very essence. Everything he loved or touched is in this space. You've got big paintings and drawings and letters he wrote and scripts, all the way down to like a bottle of Tipex he once touched. That's what's here, everything. These are all books that came from Alasdair Gray's home. This isn't all of them. There's more in the next room. He had hundreds of books. Did he read them all? I don't know. I love buying a book and then not reading it. It just sits on the shelf. I know there's a word for that, but I can't remember what it is. Oh, there's The Hobbit. I don't know why they filmed The Hobbit in New Zealand. They could have just come to Glasgow and saved a lot of money on hairy feet. I'm just saying now that when I pass away, I do not want folk looking at my books or my diaries. I don't want that. There'd just be loads of Harry Potter fan fiction and all the books I've bought about women having affairs with ice hockey players. Back of the net, in the net, on thin ice, puck crazy, she pucked me. Puck me but don't tell anybody. Secret puck. Oh, this is Alasdair's very own adaptation of Poor Things. I think all of this one was actually set in Glasgow. Let's start a bit. Welcome to Sea Baby's Bedtime Stories. I'm reading Poor Things, adapted by Alasdair Gray. Bella, when I ravished you from your home in Glasgow, I thought myself a fiend in human form. Naughty boy. No. Here's the true treasure trove. Paints, you've got inks, and I don't know what these are. It's just wee signs. Scots States. Future work, question mark. I think this was his rap name generator. I think he just fiddled in and went, I'm MC Filippo Lippi treatment. Brap. Look at Ross Roy. He looks like an X-Man. This is a print of one of Alasdair's most famous works, Cowcaddens. The original is in Kelvin Grove. They don't let me in there. I like to imagine that these people have had an argument about her new haircut and she's raging because he said, I like it, you look a bit like David Bowie. And she's like, that's not the compliment you think it is. Then you've got like a wee sinister pumpkin head man watching everything out from his top window. And he's like, oh my God, is that David Bowie? This is the Mona Lisa of Glasgow. It captures exactly who she is. Full of nonsense and people going about their business in nosy Noras and beautiful buildings. And it's good that somebody painted these buildings before they got burnt down to make way for student flats. Look, this is just my take on Alasdair Gray. It's short and it's stupid because I'm an idiot. But if you'd like to know more, you can come to the Alasdair Gray Archives here at the Whiskey Bond, or you can wander about Glasgow yourself and see the mark he's left on the city while capturing the city, from the mosaics to the paintings to the murals, all sorts. And everybody was really friendly and nobody had an issue with us coming and looking in, though the Western Baths, you need a membership.
Ashley's story, a little shade of grey. I want to see the longer shade of grey as well. You can catch Ashley here March the 23rd as Glasgow International Comedy Festival as part of that Alasdair Gray Archive commission as well. Paul Bridges as well had a hand behind the camera, I think, in that. So yeah, brilliant to see that. I need to go to the Western Baths, never been there, which is shocking. Anyway, finally this evening, one more commission, one more response, and it's from another genius. We are welcoming this stand-up maestro that is Christopher Macarthur-Boyd. Let's have a little cheer before I big him up, just to get into practice, incidentally, on your tellies, on the stage, he also co-hosts the fab Here Comes the Guillotine podcast with Frankie Boyle and Susie McCabe. It's absolutely brilliant. So Christopher's going to be performing brand new material inspired by his time exploring the stories and the characters in Alasdair Gray's life and work, and maybe even letters. I'd heard a rumour, but we'll find out more about that or not. He delved deep into the archive. I love how every single person takes a different little bit of inspiration and then utterly runs with it, and he is here to give us a preview now. So yeah, you've had a practice, but it needs to be louder now for the one and only Christopher Macarthur-Boyd. Woo!
All right, what's happening? Very nice to be here doing stand-up comedy as a response to the Alasdair Gray Archive, which is an amazing place. I'm supposed to do stand-up as an artistic response. Unfortunately, stand-up comedy is not an art. It's just not. It's good sometimes. But it's not really an art, unless I'm applying for funding to Creative Scotland. In which case, I'm a monodisciplinary practitioner of spoken word. But it's very nice to be here doing stand-up, but the reason I don't think that stand-up is an art is I think it's a craft, you know. I think it's much more like cutting someone's hair than it is a novel or a painting or a film like Ashley made or a play like Alan made. These are pieces of art that artists have made. This is just kind of talking shite. And I'm okay at it. But it's not an art, do you know what I mean? The thing about stand-up that makes it not an art is that everybody has to respond to it at the exact same time in the exact same way or it doesn't function. And you've been very good so far. But like a novel or a painting, people come in and they watch it and they go away and they make their own mind up about it in their own time. If everybody responded to stand-up by laughing a week later, the gig would be fucking terrible, do you know? So that's why. And it's interesting watching Alan's response to the picture of Billy Connolly and Alasdair Gray meeting at the launch of Lanark in 1981 or 1980 at the Third Eye Centre, which is now the CCA, because to me that really exemplifies the difference between an art and a craft, you know. my family love Billy Connolly. I love Billy Connolly so much. He's one of my favourite human beings in the world, just like Alasdair Gray is. And I used to go on caravan holidays with my nana and my granda and my uncle and my auntie and my mum and my dad and my cousin Daniel and my sister Lauren didn't make it. But we used to go to a caravan park and we would stick on a Billy Connolly video, VHS. I'm older than I look. And we would all watch Billy Connolly together. An audience with Billy Connolly where he's wearing the zebra print and Ringo Starr's in the audience and Robbie Coltrane's in the audience and everybody in the family could enjoy Billy Connolly together. I don't know if my nana would have got such a big kick out of Poor Things, you know. You can't really enjoy Alasdair Gray's work with your family. Imagine just being like, what's that book you're reading about? Well, it's kind of about a disfigured scientist who can't digest food internally, who makes a wee friend at university, but they don't get on, they fall out, but then they bump into each other at the Kelvin Walkway, I'd imagine next to where that heron hangs out with a wee waterfall. They bump into each other, and he's got a woman with him. And she has the brain of a baby inside her because a really sad English woman jumped in the Clyde to commit suicide while pregnant. And the scientist took the brain from the baby and put it in the adult woman, and now she's having sex, which is weird because I don't think that's my cup of tea, Christopher. No, well... Does he get any other books? Well, I'm reading another one called Janine 1982. That's my personal favourite. It's about a kind of depressed, suicidal Tory in a hotel room in Peebles, wanking himself to death, thinking about the most sadistic fantasies he's ever had, and he's drinking whiskey alone, and he's thinking about women whipping each other and getting caught in barbed wire, and he's wanking and he's wanking. Eventually he dies. Very briefly, and it goes into a short internal novella within the text, a smaller version of Lanark, and then he decides that life is worthwhile. But it's a response to Thatcherism. Maybe just leave that for you and your dad. Yeah, maybe, Nana, maybe. It's so nice to be performing in this room. I've never seen this before. It's really breathtaking. I've been in the Òran Mór before, and somebody told me that Alasdair Gray had done the ceiling. I thought they meant the ceiling for the downstairs venue. I was like, this is fucking shite. What the fuck? But now I'm in the right place, and it's beautiful. I remember the first time I seen Alasdair Gray's work. I was going out with a lassie from Govan, and we were in the Goma in town. The Goma is such a great place to see stuff. It's a real mixed bag, the Goma. You don't know what particular brand of modern art that you're going to get. Is it going to be a nice painting done in a slightly unusual style, or is it going to be just a bag of pish? I literally seen a bag of pish in there one time. It was supposed to be an example of an urban weapon. It was a condom full of pish. So I'm always kind of unsure about the Goma, but we went in and there was these amazing black and white images. It was 2014, and it was a dramatic, apocalyptic version of Glasgow with the waves crashing down and Leviathan, and on either side it said, let Glasgow flourish by telling the truth. And I was like, Jesus Christ, man, this is absolutely incredible. And it showed you his influences. It showed you the dramatic black and white contrast to Japanese woodcuttings, and it showed you William Blake's incredible polymathic art as well. And then at the end there was this wee TV screen, and it was an old man in a chair with a wee jumper on and glasses like that, and his hair was all over the place. And I thought, oh, that's so nice. The artist's put his granda in his exhibition. That's lovely. And it wasn't. It was him. I was like, what? And it was such an important moment for me because, People talk a lot about representation in art and how important it is to have different voices on stage and on TV and radio, different races and nationalities and sexualities and genders and all sorts. And I really know that that's true because I didn't know I could be a wee freaky specky guy until I seen Alasdair Gray living my dream. I was like, if he can do it, I can do it, you know. I met him once. I was going up to do a gig at the QMU. It was a strange gig. It was a wheelchair-friendly comedy night. It was called Wheelie Good Night. That's not my joke. That's theirs. And it was in the QMU, which is not a wheelchair-friendly venue. So every individual audience member had to get the lift one at a time up to the Jim's bar. And I was cutting from Hillhead subway station up to the QMU, and I was going down Ashton Lane, and just like that story from earlier by Sarah about the barman, and I believe, I'm trying to figure out what bar that was. It's either Ginty McGinty's or Vodka. I don't take Alasdair as a Vodka guy, but listen, he's full of surprises, and I was going past Ginty McGinty's, and he was just there, and I couldn't believe it. I had, not in this tote bag, but I had Alasdair Gray, I had Lanark, a copy of it, and I got him to sign it. And if you go on my Instagram, there's a picture of what's inside it. He said, "To Christopher." And I was so starstruck, I didn't know what to say to him. But, I mean, how mental is it to have a copy of this in your fucking bag? It's heavy as the Dickens, right? But he signed it. This isn't the same copy. This is an unsigned copy, but I brought it out for dramatic effect anyway. I've lost the coffee in a pub in Perth called the Green Room, which is my eternal horror to even have played that in the first place. But listen, I remember, I think this is such a good book. People talk about the interest of the form in it. People talk about, how incredible it is that it's a 4-part, non-linear story. It's 2 novels mashed together. But I think the form's one thing, but the content is another. The themes are another. Like the form's just there to sell the story, and the story's about trying to find light in your life, the search for light and the search for happiness. And I wish the story of me meeting Alasdair was like funnier, but I remember he was signing my book, and I said to him, "Oh, are you here by yourself?" And he just went, "My wife died a year ago." And I said, "Well, I'm off to Wheelie Good Night, Alasdair. Thanks for the uplift, man, you know." But it's interesting. I've been going to the Alasdair Gray Archives, and really, it feels wrong, to be honest with you. I'm going through his Christmas cards here, and really, he sent a lot of them. I found a copy of Celtic magazine that he illustrated the front cover for, and it's dated September 12th, 2001. Not one mention of the attacks. Fair play, big man. Al-Qaeda's decision's not as important as Henrik Larsson and Martin O'Neill, but hey-ho. He was an eccentric guy, and it's so amazing being a fan of Alasdair's and being able to live in the West End and kick about and see things like this and Hillhead subway station and all these different amazing places, and to be able to meet, like I was watching a thing on YouTube today, and it's a character from Old Men in Love doing a lecture with Sorcha from the archive about Lanark. Like, his work is still alive because we're still living in it. The thing he said about living imaginatively, he brought that to life, man, you know. And I remember I was doing a corporate at the Hilton, just over the river. And they made me eat with the audience, which I never like doing because I'm quite picky and I don't want old men to think I'm a wee dick because I don't eat vegetables. So I remember like, this is going to be terrible. And I was sitting next to this kind of old guy, and I was like, oh, what am I going to say to this guy? And I was like, what was it like in the 50s, you know? Was it cool when the Beatles showed up? But he was like, oh, hi, my name's Colin. I was like, oh, nice to meet you, man. I was like, what do you do? He's like, I own the Òran Mór. I was like, whoa, that's cool. I don't think he does it anymore, but his name was Colin Beattie, and he owned this place, and he commissioned Alasdair to do this work, and he was telling me stories from his personal life of hanging out with Alasdair. He told me that one time they were at a party on Byres Road, just out there, and it was getting really late, and it was at Alasdair's house with Morag, and it was way too late, but people weren't taking the hint that they should leave, so Alasdair just stripped completely naked. And everybody got the point, you know? He was eccentric. He was such an amazing artist, man. But people don't... I don't think he's ever going to get the mainstream acclaim that he should. Like, his art should be in, like, in Hollywood. Do you know what I mean? Like, his art should be put up, but he was an countercultural figure. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was against British imperialism. He was against, like, nuclear weapons, which is just so mental. Like, I just feel like Lanark, the big last bit of it's all about how we're building these weapons of death and keeping them in Glasgow and how weird that is. And it's 45 years later, and they're still fucking there. Like, they're 50 miles away from here. That's like a 20th the distance the Proclaimers would walk. Like, what the fuck? How are they so close? We're still living in unthink, really. I don't know. Scottish independence as well. He wrote so much about Scottish independence, and the politics of his books are kind of unentwinable. That's not a word, but you can't really take the politics out of them. Like, I was doing some gigs in Ireland there, and it's so embarrassing as a Scottish person. Like, they don't let their culture be fucking de-Irishized over there. Like, it's so fucked up that Yorgos Lanthimos took Glasgow out of poor things. Fuck you, Locust. And do you know what happened? Do you know what really pissed me off? Is there's a bit that in the book it's set in Egypt, but then he makes it set in Athens. It's like, oh, so you think it's all right for your place to be in it? Why, Yora? Anyway. But I was in Dublin. I'm always so embarrassed to be in Ireland as a Scottish person because they're a real independent country. They've got their own money and their own government and their own crisps. They've got everything. It's absolutely incredible, you know. And over here, we're still part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. In fairness to us, they tried harder. You know, they really put a shift in over there. I went to the St. Stephen's Green, the site of the Easter Rising in 1916 over there, and my God, they fought and killed and died for independence. And over here, we were like, we would like to be asked if we would like to leave. And they were like, do you want to leave? And we were like, never mind, it's fine. I don't want to leave, I want to be asked if I would like to leave. You know? And I can't really, I don't think you can sit and read Lanark with your family, but it's the type of, his work, Ginny 1982 and Poor Things and all these amazing books, it's stuff that once you're done hanging out with your family, you go to your bed and you read alone and you get lost in this guy's imagination. And like, I read this book and I'm just swept back to that lassie that I went to the Goma with when I was starting out doing stand-up when I was living with my mum and dad. And it was around about the time of the Scottish independence referendum. I'll never forget the moment of the Scottish independence referendum. I woke up and I came downstairs and my mum was watching TV. She's watching the news with a big smile on her face, but she wasn't watching Frasier, you know. She wasn't watching Everybody Loves Raymond. She was watching the news, and it said, Scotland says no, 55%. Something in my heart just broke. I was like, Angela, I don't know how you can do that to this country. Scotland finally had the chance to steer the rudder of its own ship, and you have dashed that ship upon the rocks. I will fight for Scottish independence till my bones crumble like stale shortbread, and I'll scream Viva la Caledonia from the rooftops until my lungs are but the dry, haggard droning wheeze of the bagpipe. I would rather die on my feet today than live forever on my knees. And my mum said, well, if you like independence so much, why do you get your own fucking flat? So, hey, listen. I don't think stand-up is an art. And it's a fun way to spend 20 or so minutes, and I hope you have enjoyed this. It's been an absolute honour to be part of Grey Day. I'm a huge fan of Alasdair Gray, and it's so nice to share it with fellow fans. My name's Chris Macarthur-Boyd. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Let's hear it again for Christopher Macarthur-Boyd. Like, stand-up comedian and rock star. Did you see, like, now the mic stands away over here. Like, I feel like I need to be chained to my lectern because I don't have those skills. Anyway, thank you so much again for coming tonight. There's a QR code which I think is going to be online later. It might even be coming on now. You can get in touch, let us know what you think, and obviously you can also listen to and watch Sara's full story. I think one of these miraculous QR codes as well. And yes, you can let us know what you thought about today and any thoughts you might have on going forward as well. A huge thank you again to Sorcha Dallas. You've seen how often I've looked over for a reassurance this evening. Custodian of the Alasdair Gray Archive. Honestly, what she does in that building, let alone bringing us all together in places like this, is absolutely exceptional. Also, thank you to partners, the Glasgow International Comedy Festival, Glasgow 850 Festival Fund, and Canongate. Let's have a cheer. I mean, where would we be without Canongate? My goodness. Thank you to all of our performers. I'll name them and then you can cheer in unison for all of them indeed. Sara Sheridan, Alan Bissett, Christopher Macarthur-Boyd, Ashley Storrie, Scott Twynholm's music, the Glasgow School of Art, Design, Communication, animators. I deserve a cheer for getting through that. Thank you for cheering so I can catch my breath. Thank you so much to Òran Mór for hosting us in the most absolutely perfect space. My goodness, thank you so much for being here, for supporting, for cheering along, and hopefully loving it as much as we have seen these responses this evening. And finally, always, thank you to Alasdair Gray. Where would we be without him? Glasgow, Scottish culture, everything we stand for. This very room would all be so very, very different and much less thrilling without him. Here's to you, Alasdair. Here's to you for coming. Thank you. I'm away. Thanks again.